Alright, hit the button. Video time. Professor Anton video. Yeah, it was earlier in the week. Haven't gotten around to it. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah. Don't even remember the beginning of it. But anyway, it's the response video to the Rockin' Mr. E video guy thing. Where he did just a quick spiel on the fact that, 2 + 2 = 4. And dirt is dirty. Kind of. The real world is not beyond our grasp. We can kind of figure out what's going on out there, and it's just there's no point in playing a game that it's all subject to individual interpretation. No, there's reasonable interpretation and unreasonable interpretation of the facts. Yeah, that's sort of how it works, fellas. So anyway, Professor Anton, nice guy, but absolutely full of some sort of stuff that has the texture and aroma of, excrement and such. Yeah. Anyway, let's play along.
Or it's a little drizzly and light's breaking through and I see a rainbow in the sky. Now,
well, of course it's a rainbow. That's a unicorn smear. You're going to try to argue the rainbow isn't there if old Professor Anton ain't looking at it? Is that the argument? We know the physics, and we know the rainbow is rainbowing, okay? The fact that you can see it is really nice for you, I guess, if it does it for you. But yeah, it's just an atmospheric phenomenon. You're in the right place at the right time to gain some crap that's coming off of it, some refracted light, and that's all there is. It's not. There's nothing else there.
Rainbow there, independent of observers.
Yes, it's still rainbowing. Whether you're there or not, it's rainbowing. Yes.
I think if you're going to say that it is, you're not based in science. Right?
Well, that's easy to say, and then you can add right after it, like, wow, can't you get this? That it's not scientific to think that our eyeballs don't make rainbows? Yeah, no, it's the other way around. The rainbow hits our eyeball.
That one of the things that contemporary science shows us is that rainbows depend upon certain conditions, and one of the conditions of rainbows is an observer at a certain angle of the...
No. It's just bullshit. Obviously, the, like say if there was a crystal on the ground, or a magnifying glass, right? Here's a little magnifying glass. And I drop it. But it's in the right position, and if the sun's in the right position, it will create an intensity of light in one location, not everywhere on Earth, just in one place, one way. And so that's what rainbows do. They're just little lenses in the sky, and they'll create a rainbow effect if you're in its focus. But if you're not in its focus, you don't see no rainbow. It's just not. It's not. That's all it is. This isn't. You're not going to find the meaning of life in rainbows. It just isn't there. It's just a friggin' optical. I won't even say illusion. It's just an optical effect. That's all.
Incident. That is, we have to have a certain angle, and it's the conspiring of the moisture, the sun, the perspective, the distance, and then the observer.
Right. Well, you could say that about glare on a windshield, right? But you're not going to try to make some sort of grand phantasmagorical theory out of glare, are you? It's just, it's not metaphorically pretty. It's not a good fantasy character. Glare comes to town. It's just not going to make it for too many people. Oh, dear.
You can't remove any one of them and still have the rainbow. I think we think that if you remove the observer, the rainbow is still there. But...
Yeah, no, you're not going to be able to pull this one off. The effect is still affecting. The photons are still photoning.
It really isn't, any more than if you remove the moisture, is the rainbow still there? Well, no, it's not.
No, I mean, that's just such an open, obvious cheat. You know, if you move the gasoline from the engine, then the engine isn't running anymore. Okay, so you can't hear it, right? But you know, we know that if you're not there to hear the engine running, the engine is making noise. I mean, this isn't a reasonable way of thinking.
One of the essential parts of the rainbow is gone, and observers are part of that. So just from your example, are rainbows there objectively independent of observers?
Look, was Saturn before human beings evolved on planet Earth? Was Saturn still Saturn before Galileo figured out the telescope thing and we started looking at the thing up there? Was it still Saturn? I think it still was. I think it still had all of its components, the rings, the whole thing was happening, even though nobody was looking at it.
Was it relative? No, that's not the right word to use at all. How about if there's me and you and we're outside and we're looking at the rainbow? If we both look at the rainbow and we see just one rainbow, are we both looking at the same rainbow scientifically? And I'm not arguing.
Well, you're both looking at the same effect created. So you're both looking at the same machine. You're looking at it from different angles. Like if you're looking at an elephant, well, yeah, your angles could be different. So you could be looking at the front and the other guy could be looking at the back end, but it's still an elephant. The elephant just has different character from different angles in terms of what it appears to be. But its stomach is still digesting grass and it's trees. It's still got feet, and everything else is still the same. It doesn't change because you change your perspective.
For what you're, I think, going to call solipsism or subjectivism, no. The fact is that we can scientifically demonstrate that there are two different rainbows being observed. That is, there are many different rainbows in the sky as there are people looking at it, and the positionality of the rainbow, in fact, is different depending upon who's looking from what vantage. I mean, that's sort of why a rainbow receives.
Well, whatever. You could say this about every single thing on Earth. I mean, you cannot look at anything and see the same thing from different positions because it's just the way dimensionality works. You just can't do that. All right, every position will give you a new view. But what does this have to do? We're smart enough to understand that. This isn't a mystery. This isn't a source of some sort of, here's something, this will mean something. No, it doesn't mean anything because we can do this. We can move our position. We can experience things in very different positions and different days and different months, and we can see something in the summer, we can see it in the winter, we can do all of this stuff. We can read a book. You like to read books. We can read a book and figure out the whole mechanical process and understand that there's nothing there. It's a mechanical process.
We move toward it. That doesn't mean that we're making rainbows up. It means that modern science has to be able to accommodate for the observer. Now,
well, no, it doesn't. Again, the rainbow was rainbowing when there was no humans on Earth. You know, when a lizard was seeing it, it was still a rainbow. Okay, the lizard wasn't going, oh, I wonder what that means. It just didn't have enough silly brain to be able to make a mountain out of a molehill, or to make a mystery out of a rainbow. But, it was still there to be seen. It wasn't destroyed because there was no little human sitting there getting all gooey over it.
The things that I found most problematic about your video, in addition to the ridiculous, and I'm sorry to call it ridiculous, but it's a ridiculous sophomoric move to try to reduce reality to either being, comprised of objectively true or a bunch of subjective kind of relativism.
Yeah, well, that's what it is, though. There's a reality, Professor. I mean, I'm sorry. There's one reality. And we can accurately describe it, or we can play games that gratify ourselves and pretend and use our imagination and use color forms and stick little things on top of it and little smiley faces and bird chirpy and blah, 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 and play little games with it. All right? You can either get it right or you can get it the fuck wrong. And it seems to me that you're advocating for the wrong.
I think it's a false dichotomy. It polarizes people and debate. It makes people positioned on one side or the other, and it really doesn't.
Well, I mean, really, there's right, wrong, there's retard and smart. I mean, whatever. I mean, this is just stupid. I mean, you can accurately describe it or you can inaccurately describe it.
Accomplish a kind of nuanced understanding of ourselves or of our world.
Well, nuanced, and what does that mean again? Yeah, that just means let's make up some bullshit so we can all feel good about playing an idiotic game that makes absolutely no sense. Great, fantastic, marvelous. Let's all just lie. Yeah, fantastic.
But let's move to some of the problems. Okay, so you say that you're more interested in science and what science can do. Now, from your opinion, or from your objective truth, I mean, I don't know what position we're going to call this, is math. Okay, you went to calculus and the Archimedes example. Now, again, I would have went to Leibniz and Newton, but Archimedes, again, is somewhat questionable. But now, math. Is math scientifically tested? Did we scientifically test and scientifically discover the...
Yeah, well, whatever. Again, I don't know why does math have to be a mystery? It's not mysterious. Math is relationship. You like that word, relationship. It's just describing a relationship between things that can be identified. Distinctions. That's how relationship is created, correct? I mean, you can't have a relationship until you divide something, until you separate it, until you make a distinction between things. There has to be something else besides this for there to be a relationship. This can't have a relationship to itself. It has to relate to other things. And that's where the forces come into play. You can't have gravity if you're not gravitating. You know what I mean? You can't gravity yourself. You know. So, yeah, you have to be related to something else. You have to have a separation, a division. And, again, that's not complicated. And so then math is just recognizing the mechanics, the properties of divisions. And in certain realms, this is what the properties are going to be. And in other realms, this is the property. But these are relationships. If you're going to have a circle... then you're going to have this relationship between the distance across the circle and the circumference of the circle. I mean, not complicated.
Calculus? Or is math a deductive system which can't be scientifically tested and which science defers to? See, I think math is a language. It's deductive rather than inductive. And the fact that you...
calling it a language I think is kind of silly, but whatever. It's a logic, is what it is. It's just made up out of that. Accurately define the relationship, and then you can play the relationship out. You can model it, and therefore find use in it. And that's all we did when we calculate how much energy it's going to require to get to the moon. You just calculate the forces and the gravity and the pluses and the minuses, and you can figure out what it takes.
Suggest that you're advocating a scientific orientation, but then your main example is basically a math example. It's kind of odd. Math isn't conscious, independent reality. It's not mind-independent reality there.
Again, yes it is. It's just a practical fact of the universe, okay? There's a certain moons are orbiting, planetoids 2 billion light years away. Well, the 2 billion light years is a constant. The speed of light is a constant. There are certain things that are the mechanical way it is. I mean, if there's 5 planets, there's 5 planetoids. It's just a way of describing that there are 5 of these entities called a moon orbiting this planet, and there's 7 planets orbiting this sun, and just what it is. I mean, 7 is just describing what you have when you have that many of those things. Why is this mysterious?
What you're dealing with is one of the greatest inventions of the human mind. Now,
oh, come on. I mean, geez. It's not an invention. Again, it's just revealing the truth. Pi is not an invention. It's recognizing, it's discovering a relationship. Trigonometry, most of it is discovering relationship. This is what things do in the real world. This is the relationships that are forced upon these things. These are the properties they have. Yeah, I mean, there's just, whatever.
Is there a mathematical order there in the world? Well, it is to the extent that we say so, but even there it's problematic. Is it a base 10? What kind of number system are you going to...
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Okay, that part is a projection of a human being to say, well, I mean, who cares what the bases are? The bases aren't part of the functional math. You still have to have some sort of real number. That just, I mean, bases are not used in the math itself. They really don't play a role except to make it, to create shorthand. So you can square something or do some other kind of thing. But it doesn't have any function in the math itself. It's just a shorthand that makes the math more fit on the paper better.
Use. See, I think you're making it, when you give the 2 + 2 = 4 stuff, you're moving out of a certain kind of mathematical language. I think you think math is math. You don't realize that there are mathematics. There are plurals. There are different forms of geometry, right? I mean, there wasn't just Euclidean geometry. We have Lobachevsky and Riemann who've developed internally consistent geometries that are a little, the inner sum of the angles are a little bit above and a little bit below 180. It gets pretty complicated, right?
But who has to work in with those complications? I mean, those complications only become real in some kind of theoretical sense. They're really not going to get in our way in the practical real world. In the practical real world, we don't need exactly a gallon of gasoline in a can. We just need something close. I mean, we just need something close to 1 donut and 1 cup of coffee.
You suggest in your video that and you go to Plato with the notion of the good, the beautiful, and the just. Okay, now if you're going to go to Plato, Plato is interested in the good and the beautiful and the just. And the truth about those, right? Is there an objective truth about the good, the beautiful, and the just? I think there you're starting to get into these issues of cultural relativity. The problem is that in the contemporary world, in the modern world, a world of plurality, a world of different traditions and different cultures. I mean, for the Greeks, barbarian was the word they used for the other, because it went bar, 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 bar. That was the sound that they thought people who didn't speak Greek made. And the other, the non-inter...
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're sort of making the point, aren't you here? That this relativistic stuff is arbitrary and nonsensical, and it's just bullshit. All right? And then when you get it right, you land on the moon. All right? When you don't get it right, you whatever, you fall off a cliff and die.
Was not respected as an equal. Some of the identity politics about people being excluded from certain forms of discourse is what a lot of this is about, because the good, the beautiful, and the just, when people thought that there was intrinsically an objective truth about the good, the beautiful, and the just, many people revolted against that and said, I disagree with what you think justice is. The question of objective truth regarding justice is part of the haggle. Also...
Yeah, well, I know, but the only way justice can even be understood is you got to understand the good thing, right? I mean, if you don't understand the good, you can't figure out what justice is. And beautiful, well, that sort of is irrelevant, isn't it? I mean, that's subjective crap. So let's throw that word in the bin. And just deal with this idea of good and bad, positive, negative. And if we can quantify what that's made out of, well, then you got justice. The justice is just doing what's required, right? I mean, our justice system really isn't a justice system, right? I mean, it's not really doing justice. I mean, it's not fixing something, all right? It's just sitting there saying, well, we got this problem where we can only do something after the fact. We can't really prevent it 100%, so we're stuck. And so we create this deterrent mechanism. And so the justice is that we're going to try to scare or intimidate people from doing something bad by imposing a kind of justice on the guilty. But there's no real point in doing that, right? I mean, there'd be no point in just punishing them for no reason, like God does, right? Like, I'm going to send you to hell, and you can never get out of hell. I mean, that would be stupid. So we just say, no, we'll punish you because we want to scare those other bastards. But we wouldn't do it forever. You know, we just do it enough to deter you, to scare you.
Regarding the good and the beautiful, we could go to those. But why don't you, if you really do believe that there is this objective truth, why don't you tell us what is objectively true regarding the...
Okay, abiogenesis, DNA molecule replicating, 4 billion years of evolution, no real agenda, reproduction for the sake of reproduction, every bit of our being created as merely a tool, like a shark's tooth, to perpetuate the species through a silly and idiotic forced competition, a cage match with other sentient beings. And we play along. We did our pit bull duty. We chomped the other guy's neck. We broke his bones. We defeated him, annihilated him, beat him in the competition, so we could wave some stupid flag and say we win. And that's all it's for. Some stupid ego flag-waving crapola. Some jackass, fucktarded, silly parade of let's celebrate our complete ownership. Let's celebrate the leash that a DNA molecule has tied to the collar around your neck.
Good, the beautiful, and the just. Lay it all out for us. I think if you could, I mean, that would be a good start. My guess is you're going to get a lot of people who say, well, no, I disagree with that. Now, are they wrong? Are they relativists? Do they have a different objective truth? Who is it who gets access to say what the objective truth is? And this is...
Well, it's got to be a logical diagram. So I would argue that you go to something like, I got those 5 Ephesus videos, for example. I think they're a good start. They outline the premises. If there's a premise you disagree with, well, then that has to be argued. And you have to find out who's got is there a logical competing theory, a sensible, reasonable competing theory defining or describing one of those fundamental facts established in those videos. And there you have some point of contention. You have a place to argue from. And then you have to just decide, well, is this reasonable? Is there a reasonable doubt in this trial because this evidence is flawed? Is there something weak in the evidence? And I'm saying there's nothing weak in the evidence. We know what we are. We know where we came from. And it's just fucking chemistry out of control.
Partly why I really disagreed with your ending of your video. You suggest that why would anyone want a relativist position when they have objective truth? It's sort of what you're saying. And then you bring up fundamentalist Christian right. No, these are people who believe in an objective truth. Unmistakable truth. Now you're going to say, well, no, it's not testable by science.
Yeah, well, and it's not even, like I said, it's not up to any kind of standard. Period, right? It's no logical standard. The logical standard is some kind of notion of faith, which is anti-logic. Okay? Belief without reason. I don't have a reason to believe it, so I'll just believe it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, that just fails right on the start. That doesn't even meet the first premise, right? The first premise has to be that you have to have some kind of sensible way to measure and weigh the credibility of a statement. And, yeah, I mean, that's just, well, if you're going to measure it because you believe it, that's not evidence of anything. Faith? Come on, that's not going to work.
There is mathematics. The number of contradictions in your video was really kind of alarming. I think that
well, it'd be really nice if you quoted them exactly and such.
It was odd. I mean, why say that relativists are interested in a sort of power move and they're denying truth to gain power or as a power play? No, if that's an all true, and I'm not trying to defend the position, I would try to defend the argument that it's a false dichotomy. And it's really...
Well, I think there is an incentive built into it. I mean, why would you destroy the logical truth. Why? I mean, the people who tried to defend O.J., right? They're defending him because they had an incentive of some kind. The ones on the jury wanted to write a book, and the people had all kinds of incentive. Let's get Whitey was in there. There's lots of incentives people had to come up with rationalizations and excuses and bizarre theories to save the poor celebrity from accountability. And, but you could see it was just bullshit, and I'm saying I'm calling the same kind of bullshit here. People are just trying to escape the truth. That's what all this relative crap is. It's escapism.
Not very sophisticated. It's introducing kind of either-or argumentation that's really, really simplistic and problematic. But
again, you have to point out the simplicity of it. That's not a reflection of the reality. The reality is simple. Whose fault is that? Not mine.
To suggest that the people who you're calling relativists are doing for a power move, I think it's just wrong. It's just really naive. No, the point.
Well, I guess there's no real point in arguing the motives of these people, but I'm just saying it's part of what has to be understood to understand why would somebody even argue in defense of this idea of faith as a source of belief? That somehow that's credible. I mean, it's just nonsensical on its face.
Is that there are many people who are engaged in trying to challenge the dominant status quo regarding what the objective truths are, because those...
Well, I'm sorry, there is no status quo regarding any rational definition of truth, right? So again, you can't sit there and call, just because religious people are arrogant and obnoxious, let's not argue that they have acquired their perception or description of reality in any kind of honestly logical manner. It's obviously anti-logical, all right? So it can't be called objective because their perspective is in complete bias. It's completely biased by a wish faith. They want it to be true. They're allowed to say, I have faith in the truth, and therefore it's the truth. And that's just nonsense. So, I mean, on its face, it can't be called an objective perspective because it's completely biased. I mean, it's biased towards no evidence. How the hell could that possibly be objective? Closing your eyes is the objective perspective. I will close my eyes to the facts, and I will see what I want to see. How could this be the objective perspective? It's no perspective. It's off the fucking board. It's out of the fucking universe.
People who claim to have the objective truth often do so for power purposes. It's often religious.
Well, now you're just turning it around and now impugning objectivity by impugning the motives of the individuals who are claiming something that might be called it. But again, we know that it's false to call closing your eyes objective in terms of perspective, and it's also stupid to sit there and say, well, we're going to say because these people are badly motivated, now the concept itself is broken. No, I don't think so.
Groups that claim an objective truth, or moral groups that claim an objective morality, and they do so for power reasons.
Well, again, it'd be very nice if you'd sit there and outline who these are and what they are and what their specific claims are, because those claims can probably be demonstrated not to be accurate. Okay, first their claims of truth can be found to be inaccurate, and then their motives can also be used against them to demonstrate that their crime against the truth was one of self-interest.
I think it'd be hard for me to get how you're saying that truth isn't just as much used for power as relativism is used for.
Well, who cares what the words are used for? The point is what process is a legitimate process, which one's real, which one's going to get you the definition of reality, and which one is broken right from the start. Your idea that you're going to be able to get from here to there by walking around in a circle is not a good theory.
I mean, it's sort of an odd conclusion that you had in your video. I hope that other people who saw Rocking Mr. E's video really are not seduced by this kind of logic. There are more ways of knowing and coming to know the world in predictable.
Yeah, whatever. No. You got to outline those, and you say in your comment here that maybe you'll do that. So go ahead. But this is far short of what's needed.
Ways than to try to appeal to this expression, objective truth or relativism. Those are expressions, they're noises that come out of your mouth, and the meaning of them really varies depending upon whether or not you're in religious context, in scientific context, in cultural context, in interpersonal or personal.
Yeah, right. Somebody has to qualify what they're saying before they say it. And so, yeah, we've sort of gotten stuck in that kind of mode that you have to qualify how you're using the word. That's unfortunate because there's so many people who are cheating these words. But we know when somebody says they're a moral relativist, that they're saying basically that value is a perception in their head and it isn't a reflection of something real. They're not reflecting reality, they're projecting reality. And so that's kind of an easy thing to argue, right? Is that I'm saying what you want, what we're out to do is to glean what's coming off of reality to deduce what reality is. That we don't get to do the opposite. That we don't get to make up a hope or a wish and then project it onto reality.
Context, the meaning really does change, and that's not to offer a relativist position. That, again, is too course of a grade.
Yeah, well, whatever. You're always doing this. I mean, you're going to walk fences your entire life. Okay, fine. I mean, you're not an atheist. You're not an agnostic. You're not religious. Nothing. You won't pick any of these things. Fine. I just don't see any sense in it.
With only two teeth in it, and they're not really splitting the hairs in the way that they need to be separated out.
Well, if you can't get the broad strokes right, I don't know how it's possible to get the little strokes right. So that's just, but maybe that's what you want to just do. You want to keep the thing ambiguous. So obviously, any stroke you can break, you want to break, because that opens the door to the, let's just make our own strokes. So in my opinion, you're doing the projection thing. You're doing the, well, this reality is pretty stale. So let's let reality fluff around in our brains, and then we can project a rainbow on it. And, yeah, it's just bullshit. So anyway, yeah, till next time and such. Same old, and such.